All right, guys. So welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be going over Niagara caching. In some situations, you might want to play a Niagara system in reverse, forward and reverse. This is probably best done only in cinematics, but um, I'll go over the details of that here in a minute. So as far as I know, there's no way to make particles start from the outer edges and move inwards in in some manner, such as, like, for example, if you're trying to make a fade in effect for a font like this. For example, I have this 3D font here, and if I want to make this fade in with Niagara, this, as far as I know, is the only way to do it. So I'm going to go over a couple of details. You will need a plugin, and I just put that material on there just to make it more visible for you guys. But if you come over here and you just type in Niagara into plugins, you'll see Niagara Sim Caching, and that's just a recording feature. It allows you to record Niagara simulations and then play them back. Now, the downside of this is it removes the randomness of Niagara, but the upside of it is that you can play it in reverse. So, with that said, I'm going to go over a few details here. Now, Niagara caching is fairly memory heavy. It requires a lot of memory because all those little particles are being recorded and they're being played back. So the more of these that you have, the more particles you have, the heavier it's going to be. If you can get a basic Niagara particle simulation down that doesn't have a lot of particles, then it probably won't be quite as heavy. Another thing that plays a factor in this is your FPS. Whenever you're recording it, the higher your FPS, the heavier it's going to be, obviously, because it's going to require more data to record. Another thing that you should take into consideration is the length. So the length, the frame rate, and the number of particles all plays a factor in how heavy it's going to be. So in my example, I have a Niagara system, and it just if you attach it to a skeletal mesh, it'll play it based off of the skeletal mesh. So in order to do this, you do have to record it in a sequence. And you can come up here and add a level sequence. And then you can just add your Niagara effect into the world and bring it out here like this. You can select your Niagara component here. And let's see, Niagara Cache is one of them. System toggle track allows you to activate it, deactivate it, and trigger it. So if you trigger it right here, then you'll see that when it reaches that point, it'll trigger it. Now on mine, there's a slight delay after it's triggered, but that's just the way mine's designed. So if you watch, it'll take a second. You see. So anyway, that's how that works. So I'm going to go back into the one that I made for this purpose, and I'm going to go to my Niagara component, and I'm going to add a Niagara cache. And then I'm just going to press the record button. Now, there it is. So now what you're going to do is I'm just going to deactivate that. You can also right click and you can deactivate the Niagara cache itself. Oh, that's the attachment. My bad. Yeah, I'll probably just deactivate it. We'll see. Yeah, that's it. So just don't activate it, basically, is what you do. And you can scrub through it manually to make sure that it's not activating because you don't actually want it to activate. Now, after you've done that, and I'm just going to hide, I'm just going to hide that. Now, I did make mine spawnable. I converted them into spawnables. So if we come back over here to this other one, you can right click and convert it to a spawnable. In most situations, you're going to want your sequencer stuff to be spawnable. And if you don't, then it's going to assume that object is going to be in the world and it's going to try to grab that specific object. And if it's not there for some reason or it hasn't been streamed in, then you're going to have problems. So basically, all you have to do after that is right click and go to properties on the sim cache itself and reverse. And now you'll see it does it in reverse on this one. That's pretty much it, guys. So what we could do now is I'm just going to delete that one and I'm going to save this. And you have to give it a second because it is heavy. I'll show you here in a second just how big this one is. But I got a lot of particles and it's somewhat of a long one too. So I have 165 frames here. It has to record the position of every particle on every frame. So the more frames you have, the more data it's going to require. And as you can see, it's taken a long time to save it. And the reason why is because it's big. Now, another thing you need to consider whenever you're doing this is load times. So if you have this sequencer on your map, and this is another reason why you want these to be spawnable, is so that you can remove those sequencers from your map. If you spawn your map, if you load your map and this sequence is in it, it's going to take extra long to load your map. And the reason why is because this is 1.46 gigabytes, so nearly 1.5 gigabytes just for this Niagara cache, and that was actually a fairly small one. I've had them about 2.5 gigabytes in my other project, but I'll show you. If I duplicate this one, and I'll call this one forward. All right, guys, we're back. So just so you know, I renamed this one to _R. It did take a long time because it's such a big file. And then I made this one and called it _F for forward. So you have to be careful when you're doing this. I'm just going to open up this other sequence I made earlier. You can create a new one. And what we're going to do is drag this down, and we're going to drag the forward one in there. And then we're going to drag this out like this. Just click and drag. And then we're going to drag this one onto the timeline right next to it. It looks like, yeah, okay. Yep. And I'm just holding control down and using my mouse wheel to zoom out, in and out. So now you'll see, well, I have to come in here and change this one first. So I'm going to unreverse that. Yep. And then come back out. And so now you'll see it fades in. Well, I kind of have that backwards. So let's you get the idea though. It fades in and then it fades out. And just so you know how mine looked, let me come back into here and I'll show you. All right, guys. So before I go, I'm just going to show you how mine looked. In case you were wondering how I did that, um, well, I'm basically modifying a value on the material itself using a material parameter collection on this one, and it dissolves. It's a dissolve effect, and so I'm playing this. I'm playing this dissolve the sim cache, and then at this particular point, I start fading the text material in, dissolving it in. You should, I guess, I should say, and that's how I got the actual skeletal mesh to do that. That's pretty much it, guys. So if you have any questions, ask down below. I'll try to answer them. I'm not an expert at Niagara or materials for that matter, but I'll do my best to answer any questions you may have. Like I said, frame rate, the number of frames, mostly the number of frames that you have in your recording, and the number of particles. Those play the biggest difference. Of course, changing your frame rate to a higher frame rate is going to uh, cause your number of frames to increase. So, yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it, guys. I'll see you in the next video.